The Harry Potter books were full of mysteries, but there was one in particular that continues to evade us all. Why didn't Hagrid get his wand back once he was acquitted? We know from the events in the Chamber of Secrets that Hagrid was expelled from Hogwarts during his 3rd year. But he wasn't acquitted until the end of Harry's 2nd year at Hogwarts, at least 50 years later. Hagrid was accused of opening Salazar Slytherin's chamber and thus unleashing the dreaded basilisk, which resulted in the death of Moaning Myrtle. At the time, everyone thought Hagrid's pet spider, Aragog, had been the culprit, never imagining a more deadly and terrifying monster like the basilisk. Hagrid was officially acquitted only after the events in the Chamber of Secrets, when it was proven that Tom Riddle had been the heir of Slytherin, the one who unleashed the basilisk on the Muggle-born students, and that Aragog had nothing to do with the Chamber of Secrets, or with Moaning Myrtle's death. Hagrid was already 65 years old and had spent over 50 years as gamekeeper. By the time he was acquitted, that was the life he knew, so I doubt he could go back to studying and finish his 7 years at Hogwarts after all that time. If he had done so, he would be in the same class with Harry. I'm sure Hagrid himself wouldn't stand for it. He would consider it useless and a waste of time. Regardless, knowing Hagrid, he would be far too humble and proud to accept such an offer. We know Hagrid was allowed to use magic after his acquittal. He had been allowed to do magic openly ever since he became a teacher, but because he was never fully trained, his magic was never going to be what it should. He was always going to be a little bit inept. Now, as for his wand, I can't imagine how the Ministry could give it back to him. Once a wand gets snapped in half, nothing can repair it. Besides the Elder Wand, of course. The Ministry could simply allow Hagrid to buy another wand, but I'm not sure it would have even allowed that, as Hagrid had undergone little magical education. The Ministry would deem him as being dangerous with a real wand in his hands. Alternatively, it's likely that the Ministry did allow him to buy a new wand, but Hagrid denied because he didn't trust himself. Another alternative is that once Hagrid was allowed to do magic officially, he didn't have to buy a new wand because it's possible that Dumbledore had already repaired Hagrid's old wand for him, and it was hidden inside his umbrella. As an unqualified wizard who didn't finish his education, Hagrid was not technically allowed to perform magic until after his acquittal. And yet, the beloved gamekeeper seemed very magical, and maybe it was his umbrella that held the key to that fact, or in this case, his actual wand. Even though he was a bit inept at magic due to not having had a full and proper education, he managed some spells. It would have been difficult to complete those spells if he didn't have a completely working wand. Remember how Ron failed at some spells using his broken wand? If that had been the case with Hagrid, those spells wouldn't have worked as intended, and by this point the two would have had a similar level of education. Hagrid did relish his acquittal. Never forget that without it, Dumbledore would never name him Care of Magical Creatures teacher at Hogwarts. A suspect can't have a teaching position. Therefore, along with the Ministry's apology, which he most certainly received, he was also free to pursue any career he wanted, as long as he could find an employer, even with his limited education. Let me know what you think. Why do you think Hagrid didn't get a wand after his acquittal, or was his old wand simply hiding in plain sight?